Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday morning on Faith in Our Hometown. Ready or not, Christmas is coming. So I hope that your Advent season, at least that's one of those things we celebrate in our tradition, help prepare you for Christmas. And not just in terms of the buy-in of the gifts or the buying the groceries and getting the tree trimmed and all that stuff, but really truly in the spiritual sense of that. I hope that it's been a good lead up to Christmas for you, because 3 days from now, we will be celebrating that Feast of Christmas, which matters so much to so many of us around the region. So my guest this morning is going to be Russell Willoughby, who is the pastor at First Community Church. They're right there in the middle of Joplin. And he's going to be back with us after a quick break to talk about Christmas and all those things we are doing to be ready here now in the next 3 days. So grab your cup of coffee, settle in, and we will be right back after this Mercy Minute. So don't go away.
Blessings and greetings of Mercy to you. My name is Anna Nichols. I am a Sister of Mercy and currently the leader of Heritage and Spirituality at Mercy International Association. I love the fact that sisters throughout time have gone where they have been called to go, and they have often picked up ministries that they never intended to pick up. 25 years ago, there were 22,000 Sisters of Mercy globally. Today we're down to about 6,200 with Sister Rock and some of the others. But despite the fact there are 6,500 or 6,200 sisters left, there is an amazing number of women and men of Mercy who are working alongside us, and that continues to expand and expand, and for me that is incredibly exciting. So as far as National Catholic Sisters Week, I really look at the legacy that they have passed on and the fact that so many women, men, young people are living Mercy today. That really is for me what's significant.
Well, again, thanks for joining us this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. And Russell, thanks to you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Russell Willoughby, the pastor of First Community Church here in Joplin. I don't know whether you've ever been over to First Community Church, but it is architecturally, it is one of my favorite buildings in Joplin. I just think it's a gorgeous setting. It's a gorgeous building. It's one of those churches, kind of like, I'm fond of St. Peter's, but yes, it's kind of like one of those things when you walk in and your jaw drops a little bit and you go, this is a cool space. Something special happens in this space. So I applaud you on that. And if anybody's never seen it, they really ought to go see it.
I wish I could take credit for it.
I know, really.
It's an amazing place, though. I think you may know it's on some lists of architectural structures in Missouri that you should see if you've ever visited. And we have people drop by off and on, would like tours, and architects come by and take photos.
Yeah.
Now,
tell everybody where it's located so everybody can find it if they want to.
It's at the corner of 15th Street and Connecticut Avenue, and it's the street. It's the structure. It looks. I always tell people it sort of looks like a fortress, kind of. Yeah. But it's very distinct. I'm sure everybody in Joplin has seen it.
Well, if you've never been over that way, I find that I follow certain traffic patterns, and if your traffic pattern never leads you over there, you ought to go sometime, because really it is very, very nice. It's
a wonderful place to worship in on Sundays.
Yeah. So the other reason why people might come to see us, because I know you guys are hosting your annual Christmas dinner.
That's right.
This Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day, we begin serving at 11 in the morning, and we serve until 2 in the afternoon. It's no charge. It's open to the public. It is a true community event, and we serve it's close to 700 meals. This is the 45th year that the church has done it. Yeah. Even when the church was so heavily damaged after just the terrible tornado that hit Joplin, the congregation worked very hard to get our fellowship hall up and running first, so that they could have the Christmas meal that year. It was a very symbolic thing for them to do.
So tell me, 45 years. What was the thinking behind it when they started it? You don't know.
I wasn't here then.
Yeah, I know. You've only been here a couple years.
You know, that's something that I need to find out about, because it is unusual to have, and it's a large segment of our congregation turn out and volunteer and help make this happen. Well, yeah. And they get there early. They're early on Christmas Day when other people are sitting in their pajamas opening presents. These people are out there, putting turkeys in the ovens and baking the rolls and making the mashed potatoes. But it's amazing. I know many churches and parishes have services on Christmas Day, but this is sort of our worship service in a way. It really is a feast day, but in a sort of a literal sense,
which I think is great. I've always been impressed by it. I know I've got a parishioner who's married to one of your parishioners, and he's been helping at it for as long as they've been in Joplin, and they've always spoken highly of it. And I just think it's wonderful. So if any of you are going to be sitting there by yourself and say, your family's not coming in this year or doing whatever, please, I just think it's a phenomenal way to be hospitable to everybody on Christmas Day. I mean, really, truly, to open up the doors and to invite, the Word made flesh to come in the door.
I was surprised. I was there last year for my first experience, and I was surprised at how many families, this is their tradition to come to First Community to have their Christmas dinner or lunch, and
I'm sure many families also have the tradition of helping.
Yes,
just coming in and doing it, which I just think it's phenomenal. So again, don't sit home alone unless you want to.
There's no reason
on
to
Christmas
be
Day.
alone.
There's no reason. Obviously, you're invited to any of the Christian churches in town. I feel very comfortable making that invitation. If you want to go someplace to worship and go someplace, and obviously we all like our own, but the deal is that there's no reason for everybody to sit alone after that. And if sometimes the loneliest moments are after you've been together with a whole group of people, and then all of a sudden everybody's gone and you're there by yourself. And if that's bothering you, please get out and go to First Community. I think it's great. 15th in Connecticut.
15th in Connecticut.
And go and join in some fellowship with other people who are celebrating Christmas Day with each other at that particular point in time. If you got someplace to be with other family and friends, that's terrific too. But if you're lonely and just wanting to be with somebody else, don't sit home alone. Go, just go this Christmas. And I just, again, I applaud you all. Kudos to First Community for making it happen for these last 45 years.
Well, I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, it's a good community. So, what's your Christmas Eve and Christmas Day look like? What's that look like at First Community? Because we all do different things.
Well, as I mentioned, Christmas Day is the meal. Christmas Eve, we have a Christmas Eve service early in the evening. I believe it's at 7. And it's a music-driven service with scripture. We do serve communion as we do each Sunday in our part of the Protestant tradition. And it's a very meditative service, and it's kind of a gentle service.
What is
I
it
think.
about it praying at night?
Yeah.
What is that about that?
There's something gentle about it. Yeah, I like it.
We got a Sunday evening mass every week at 6, and especially during the winter, everybody kind of refers to it as the mellow mass. It is. It's just a mellow time to pray in the evening. It just gives you a completely different vibe in some ways
I agree.
than during the daytime. Nothing wrong with praying to the daytime, but that evening mass, that evening celebration is always a little different. It just always hits everybody differently. But I think that's in the mode of Christmas and the way that Christmas, in some ways, hits everybody differently. Sure. Christmas. How would you describe that Christmas? That Christmas vibe as opposed to other times of the year?
Well, the Christmas Eve service definitely has I understand what you're talking about. I think occurring in the evening, the sun's gone down. We know that our day is sort of drawing to a close. Yes, tomorrow, Christmas Day, is going to be a big day and all this, but for that moment, it's like we've gained permission from nature to just relax, to let ourselves be in the moment, and then for Christmas Eve to reflect upon the story of Christ coming into our lives, being born into our reality, and it's very moving.
Story. I think that there's something about the moving nature of that story that continues to get us year after year.
I agree.
That's why we keep doing this year after year. When we stop and think of Easter, for me, it's like a big explosive feast. Christmas is quiet. Christmas is always very quiet and mellow. Even Christmas Day is just, it's just like, and again, and certainly in the last 30 years, I've noticed that Christmas Eve keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and Christmas Day seems to get a little tamer, than it was. But we have a service again for the vigil, the last little bit of preparation, and all the stories settle on those last bits of preparation. But midnight mass, of course, for us is a big deal in our tradition. I teased everybody, when I first got here, they started asking me what time midnight mass was, and I thought it was the goofiest question on the face of the earth. Like, what do you mean, what time is midnight mass? Midnight mass is going to be at midnight. And they went, we've done 10 o'clock now. I'm like, no, if we're going to wait and do it at night, let's just do it at midnight.
That's funny.
And you'd have thought I gave them, well, a Christmas present. Because they were just like, oh my gosh, we're so excited we're to have midnight mass. And I love that. There's something about praying in the stillness of the night when God shrinks himself down. You know, when God just suddenly starts. And I, by the way, I brought, I don't know whether you guys noticed this, but I brought one of my little pieces of art out. This particular piece it's modeled as an imprint of the stonework in the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., which was kind of designed as a place for everybody to come, everybody to come. But it's a neat place, and I'm fascinated with it. But this is one of the where all the arches come down. It's a big Gothic church, kind of like St. Peter's, and where all the arches come together. There are these little decorative pieces. And this one, there's scenes from Scripture, and this is the one of the Nativity. So there's little swaddling clothes, and Mary and Joseph, and this one, actually, I gotta admit, this one doesn't get boxed up and go out with the Christmas decor. This one's out all year round. This was a gift from my mom and dad about 35 years ago, and I just love it. And so I keep this one out year round. There's I got a few pieces of art, and people laugh when they come. It's just like, my gosh. This is kind of like a museum, and I'm like, well, a very lived-in museum, but so.
Well, and it should be kept out all year round. We think of Christmas, this Christmas story, the birth of Christ, the coming of Christ into our lives it happens December 25th every year, but it's actually, for Christians, it's an ongoing reality.
Sure.
It's a story that's never concluded. So keep it out all year long.
I do.
It's a good reminder.
So what are you going to be preaching about this year? What's getting you this year, and as you look forward in anticipation to the Christmas feast?
Well, when it comes to the Christmas sermon itself, I go old school, I guess. I like to talk about
nothing wrong with some old school.
God was in Christ, reconciling the world unto Himself. I mean, the presence of how in the story of Jesus Christ. As Christians, we believe that we meet God, and our relationship with God is defined through that story, and even as we're drawn deeper into the story itself. So that's what I talk about.
This is a good balance for you, because as you've said before in my presence, that you're more of a theologian than and that's your approach. But see, you can take that brain power and apply it to all of that, and apply it to all of that. That pastoral sense of the fact that there's still something about that grabs us every Christmas, and it doesn't matter which part of us we're using or all of it. It can still move us to mystery.
Oh, I believe
it's amazing.
It is a reminder of the Scripture. The voice of God. My ways are not your ways. Because in the story of the birth of Christ, it's such a lowly event, just taken at face value, and yet we believe that such amazing, powerful things come forth from that. Reminds us that the power of God is evidenced and brought forth in our world in a way that's far different from the way we think of power. And that God works through small and quiet and mysterious things to do wonderful things. We're
going to unpack that a little bit after the break, because I'm going to love that part of the conversation.
I'm there.
But we're here with Russell Willoughby, who's the pastor of First Community Church here in Joplin, and we're going to be right back after a real quick break. So warm up that coffee and come right on back.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Well, again, thank you for joining us for another Sunday morning at Faith in Our Hometown. Again, my guest, Russell Willoughby, pastor of First Community Church. So we were talking right before the break about, the lowliness of God, which, again, those two phrases together is like the lowliness of God.
Strange.
Ooh, how do we do that, So say a little bit more about that. Just let's unpack this a little bit, because this should be fun.
Well, I just think we live in a world where we think of power in certain ways. Power is very big, it's very ostentatious, very showy, very bombastic. Power is often the ability to destroy less than it is to create. And yet we look at the stories that from Scripture and from our tradition that we believe really show us glimpses into the reality of God. God just seems so different from that, especially in the story of the birth of Christ. Even just classical theology, we believe that in the figure of Jesus of Nazareth, there's divinity, but there's humanity. Mm-hmm. The divinity never overshadows the humanity, never undoes the humanity. The divinity of God doesn't have to compete. It doesn't have to subordinate. Yeah. It's able to be what it is in true relationship without losing anything of itself. Yeah. Our world would be so much better if we thought of power in terms of being with each other without having to overshadow or control or hurt one another or push each other down to make ourselves rise higher. Yeah.
And that is why that message is so important, I think, in this day and age, is because God deals with power in a completely different way than we as human beings usually want to wield it. And sure. I find that so hopeful. Mm-hmm. I find it so energizing. Mm-hmm. I find it so challenging. Because, definitely. I mean, I'd love to tell the world what to do too. You do this and you do this, mm-hmm. and the world will be a better spot. But that's not the way that God usually goes at it. Mm-hmm. God enters in, and in this person of Jesus enters in, mm-hmm. in such a quiet way. I mean, the angels sing, but on earth,
But they sing to shepherds out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Where no one else can hear or see.
Right. I mean, it's not this big show of power mm-hmm. and ostentatiousness. Right. It's nothing but humility mm-hmm. and coming to earth. Mm-hmm. God shrinking himself down mm-hmm. and becoming a human being like us. Mm-hmm. And again, that's that whole. You were talking about. I've heard you say one time that if you would have been preaching. You can preach today, but if you were preaching 1,000 years ago, you might have been considered a heretic.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But one of my theology professors once just said, you'd be very lucky when you start preaching about Jesus if you don't fall off into heresy one way or another, because most people want to emphasize either that humanity or that divinity. But that what we've believed about Jesus from the very early days of the church is that he was completely the truth about humanity and completely the truth about divinity, all in one spot. And it continues to baffle us, 2,000 years later. And I love that. I mean, I just love that about God, that somehow that happens.
That's true. Well, most of the great theologians through history were heretics to someone, and they were accused of heresy in some ways. So.
Yeah, I just love that. But I mean, that has to in some ways. If we really preach that, if we preach. Right. If we preach that power isn't the way that we in the good old US of A usually claim to talk about power, we're going to be looked at a little askance.
It's cultural heresy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And there's a lot of civil religion that goes on in the United States. That's a totally different show. Maybe we should come back and talk about that. Civil religion.
We could talk about that.
That would be a lot of fun. Sure. But if we actually did that and really preached, and we could poke some holes in our traditional way that we in the U.S. like to posture and puff and talk about how powerful and mighty we are. Mm-hmm. And I still remember Mary's words, that God's going to knock those tyrants and those people with power from their thrones, and is going to lift up the lowly.
Oh, I know.
And now all of a sudden we see in the person of Jesus, God becoming lowly and being born, in poverty. I mean, not just like being born, but born a poor person.
Right.
Born in an occupied territory. Born to a young woman who was shamed because she comes up pregnant because she's not married, and the baffled spouse Joseph taking her anyway, trusting in God's power in this whole thing. It's just the whole thing.
And the family becomes refugees fleeing to a foreign land to flee violence and oppression, fleeing for their lives. And in poverty. I mean, I always thought that the Magnificat, Mary's song, when she discovers that she's going to have the Christ child, that song was so countercultural.
Oh,
I mean,
it
is just at its core. It's
I mean, that's why I was just saying Mary is not. I've said this before, and I finally had one of our women who teaches theology, God love her, at the high school at Macaulay. She's always, Mary. she's got a good riff on this, because she'll talk about the fact that Mary is so often made to be this postcard Mary,
right.
Who's sweet and loving and gentle, and she was all those things, I'm sure, as a mother and all that stuff. But when that woman sings that Magnificat, she is a radical feminist warrior.
Oh my gosh.
Who is ready to kick some tail and take some names.
That's true.
On behalf of God. Because in her way of doing it, God's being faithful and we're not, and God's going to tear down the present order and recreate everything. And now we see Jesus come as the ultimate fulfillment of that very thing.
It's the great leveling. The high are brought down, the lowly are raised up.
And and let's face it, I'm a white male, Catholic priest. I am certainly a person of privilege and power. And I know it, and I've got to be careful to watch that in myself, because I don't want God tearing me down from my throne, such that it is. But still, I don't want that happening.
We all have something to lose, but a lot of times, if we're honest with ourselves, the things that we're most afraid of losing, we're probably better off if we could lose some of it.
True enough, and that's again why this Christmas message is so startling. It just really is. It gets to the root of our fears, of being out of control, of being subjugated, of being powerless, of all those things. And what does Jesus come in? And he said exactly all of that.
Yeah, I think we've so sentimentalized the story over the centuries that we've robbed it of its edginess. It's like it's just become so dull to our understanding and interpretations. But if somehow we could set all that aside and just read the story anew and afresh, if we could, as Marcus Borg said, if we could meet Jesus again for the first time, it would be amazing.
It's interesting. Sometimes we have people say, who convert to the church or to Christianity or Catholicism or whatever, and they'll be talking about, and the people who journey along with them are just like, gee, I wish I could go back and do it over again. Yeah. And then you have to argue with yourself. It's just like, but then why would I have wanted to live my life without Jesus this whole time so that I could convert? But ultimately, the whole idea about converting is that it's got to be anew. That's what part of conversion's all about. And so again, what I've got to search for this Christmas, 3 days hence, is the same thing we all need. Any of us who claim the name Christian, 3 days hence, we need to be searching for how we need to be brought low. We need to be figuring out what God needs from us in terms of that lowliness so that he can make the world anew. Because that's really what the promise of Christmas is that we all get made anew. The world gets made anew. And I'm just like, whoa, what is that going to be 3 days hence? See, I'm already, whatever thoughts I might have had about my Christmas preaching is now getting redone again. That's why it's awful to be an extrovert. You really have to find all kinds of people to talk to so that you can get it all done.
But it does
over the
take
course of time.
And then helping the people that we minister with, and as well as ourselves, to being courageous enough to do that sort of self-exploration, that self-examination that we really need to engage in on an ongoing basis, so that the voice of God can continue to speak to us with its real force through these stories of Christ and the other stories of our faith.
And again, I don't want to, there are tender moments in the Nativity. How can you have a mother looking at her newborn baby, and a father looking over their shoulder? There is some sentimentality about it. And that does strike some wonderful chords in us as human beings. People are tenderer this time of year. They are kinder, they are sweeter, they are nicer. But I think you were right when you said we can't lose that edginess of meeting Jesus in some ways for the first time as we celebrate, one more year anew of his birth. And this is my, 58th Christmas, so for me, in some ways, there's nothing new. 33 of them have been ordained. In some ways, there's nothing new under the sun. But it's almost like if we don't figure out how we need to be low, well, really, is there any room in our lives for Christmas? Right. Do we really need Christmas? Do we need Christ?
Yeah, do we think, that we've outgrown all of that? Yeah. The edginess is in the tenderness. It's the idea that this power of God that we believe is reshaping history. We talked about Mary's song, Reshaping History itself, that it is tender. That, I mean, we look at expressions of power in our world, and I wouldn't call them tender.
No, usually
so
not.
God is doing something that's far beyond what we could imagine doing ourselves. So that's where I would think the edginess is. It's the clash of our expectations within what the reality of the story is.
Yeah. And again, trying to do all that on a Christmas day when you're preaching. Now, do you see what we go through? Do you see what we go through?
I want to come to hear you preach to see how you put it all together.
It will be interesting. It's always interesting to me. I'm always mystified by it myself. Well, anyway, my guest this morning, Russell Willoughby. Russell's the pastor at First Community Church. I want to re-mention again, in case somebody joined us late, the First Community hosts a dinner from 11 to 1.
No, till 2.
11 till 2 on Christmas Day. So if you need a place to be, join them.
That's right.
We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute, so don't go away.
You can't start living until you're healthy. My name is JT Amos. Basically, if there's food inside of this hospital, I'm responsible for it. At 332 pounds, I would always order the biggest meal so I could feel full at the end of it. Since I'm an executive chef, it's about my relationship with food. I'm gonna try that, and then I'm gonna try it again, and I'm gonna try it again, and I'm gonna try it again. Now I try it because it's part of the job, and then I let it go. I've always been a very physical person, never let my weight get in my way, but I would suffer the next day, and I would suffer that night because I'd be in just so much pain, my legs would hurt. Now I can do 2 or 3 days in a row and not really hurt. I play with my 5-year-old daughter, we go ride roller coasters, we go do things now. A journey is what it was. I chose Mercy for the bariatric surgery because I want somebody to be with me through a lifetime. So if I am going off the rails, for them to go, JT, you need to come back up, look at what you're doing. And everything just goes into place, and it's truly you're a better person.
Well, again, I thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning, 3 days before Christmas. Wonderful discussion that, again, continues to, I'm sure, is going to stir around in me for the next 3 days, and I'm sure in the heart of Russell as well, and anybody who's charged with preaching the Word or living the Word. So any of us that claim the name of Christian out there, and again, to our non-Christian brothers and sisters, we hope that you enjoy some of the pieces of our season that have kind of bled over into the culture. Not necessarily that I want your part of your culture to disappear, but just kind of forgive us our exuberance about Christmas. Christmas is one of those things that is important to us, and we need to keep unwrapping that gift that it is to continue to plumb all the depths. Christmas comes new for us each year, and that is an important thing for all of us. So come back and join us again next week. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And join us next week for Faith in Our Hometown. God bless. Merry Christmas.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.